Okay, so we're back again with Lunch with Kayla. I'm Kayla New York. Um, Today's question was, what is my biggest challenge at work? Now, now since I've been working remotely from home, I have it's kind of a different challenge, but it's kind of the same challenge that I would have within the office. And the challenge that I have is pivoting. And it's weird to say, but like pivoting, it's like that pivot. There's a pivot point, especially that every executive assistant needs to have and like specialize in and like perfect and all that stuff because you we wear so many different hats that you kind of like have to I don't I'm a baseball mom, so I've been a baseball mom for a really long time. So it's kind of like when you swing a bat. I know I lost a lot of you who don't know sports, but when you swing, you have to pivot a certain way in order to crack that ball. Because if you don't, it's not going to have the same power that it would have if you kind of just like lobbed it without moving. Now, I say that in one aspect because people are going to be coming at you from left field, right field, up, down, sideways. And especially if you're a top EA in like the top hierarchy where you're the CEO's assistant or the commissioner's assistant or someone higher up, you're going to have to learn to pivot different people's personalities. My nails are a mess. Different people's personalities. You're going to have to learn to pivot your boss's personality because if you don't pivot, it's like your emotions will get wrecked. A lot of things will fall out of balance because an EA's life is all about balance. So if you don't pivot the right way, it's kind of like, oh, when someone's fucking with you, because your boss might come in a bad mood, your coworkers might come in a bad mood, your kids might not want to, if those are remoting from home, your kids might not want to do their classwork today. So you have to juggle their classwork with you, um, your work that you're doing and make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. But you can't do that unless you pivot. So my biggest challenge is my pivot. It's like I every day I'm perfecting it. I'm learning from it. Some days are better than other days. Some days I feel like, oh, I pivoted like a pro. Other days it's like, wow, I wiped out on that one. Another way to look at it is like driving a motorcycle. You have to be able to move with the turns and you have to be able to turn when it's time to turn. And it's like my biggest challenge is sometimes you think you should go this way, but you really should go this way. And it's like you pivot the wrong way. And it causes, because you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with their own triggers, you're dealing with a lot of things. So and unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, if something goes wrong or you mess up the pivot, everybody's going to notice. Most people won't notice how well you do everything, but they definitely will notice and comment when you pivot wrong. So that for me is something that I teach my clients. You have to be able to move. You can't be too rigid in this position because it's not going to be the same every day. And then now that we're working remotely from home, the majority of us, you have kids that got to be on live classroom chats. You have your other kid who's in college. You have your other kid who's doing this. You have your other kid who's doing that. And even if you have your spouse working with you, you got to make sure that they're on time with what they're doing and make sure that they whatever support they need, they have that support. You got to make sure that the food is stocked. You got to be the cafeteria lady. Now I understand why so many cafeteria ladies are so angry. It takes a lot to make lunch every day. And then to make lunch interesting every day, that's a lot of work. So hats off to the cafeteria ladies, hats off to the teachers. So it's like, for me, my biggest challenge is my pivot. That is to answer that question. My biggest challenge is the pivot. It's like knowing when to maneuver and when to maneuver this way or to pivot. And it's like it when I am not rested, when I am not in the best of moods, my pivot is usually off. And what ends up happening is I end up lashing out at people. I end up because being an executive assistant is a calling. Being a caretaker is a calling. Being someone who really nurtures the people around them, it's a calling. It is not something that everybody has. I thought everybody had it. Found out, no, as I got older, no, there's only a few people who actually take time to nurture other people, whether it's being an EA or an administrative assistant, whether it's being a caretaker for someone who has an illness, whether it's being the sole provider of the house, whatever it is, that is not something that's easily done. And I get frustrated sometimes when people just take it for granted. So that in that pivot is when I have to pivot. When I see that someone's taking for granted what I'm doing or taking for granted thinking that, yeah, everybody's going to treat you the way I treat you, I have to pivot. And they don't like appreciate it, or I see that they don't appreciate it, I have to pivot because my mouth is reckless. My mouth is extremely reckless. My temper is extremely hot. And, you know, this is why I have to learn to pivot. It's like you can find people who be like, oh no, I'm an angel. I don't get upset. No, I'm not that person. I'm really not. I do get upset, but I do always try my best to maintain a high level of professionalism. And that's where the pivot comes in. So it's like if I see that I'm not in the best mood today, I kind of pivot and stay away from everybody unless it's absolutely necessary. Same thing remoting. If I see that today's not the best day because I am human, I pivot so I pivot early. Like Abraham Hicks says, catch it early. Don't catch the car while it's already halfway down the hill. You got to catch the car and bump it back as soon as it starts rolling. So that is hopefully I answered the question. My videos are going to get better, I promise. But if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. I hope to see you soon. Talk to you later. Stay up, stay blessed. Deuces.